Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning into my presentation. My name is Logan Churchill, and today I'll be talking about social growth and community impact education in hockey. Over the past few months, I have worked alongside members of the Toronto Maple Leafs organization to develop a program focused on providing equity, diversity, and inclusion training within the context of player development. I know that sounds like a mouthful, and it kind of is. But throughout this talk, I'll unpack the purpose behind this project, the effect that it can have, and the meaningful ways that we can get involved as members of the larger hockey community. Lately, we have seen official EDI projects or social growth and community impact projects pop up in businesses across all types of industries, including the hockey world. A lot of these projects are focused on diversifying hiring practices or making public statements and commitments to promoting more inclusive environments. And in the hockey world, a lot of them are helping break down existing barriers of harm and exclusion for kids who are currently playing the game. One of the coolest and more recent projects is called the Black Girl Hockey Club, and they advocate for Black women in hockey. Their founder, Renee Hess, has said their organization's mission is to inspire and sustain passion for the game of hockey within the Black community, and they work to prevent exclusion in hockey based on race, gender, sexuality, or ability in the face of institutional racism, financial gatekeeping, and program access. If you haven't heard of them yet, their tagline is called Get Uncomfortable, and they are a very, very cool project. At the NHL level, the LA Kings, New York Islanders, Pittsburgh Penguins, and Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Seattle Kraken have also made steps to try and change harmful practices on the business side of things. Despite these efforts and a lot of 10-cent words that I'm immediately throwing out at you, the reality is that hockey remains to be a pretty exclusive space based on gender, sexuality, race, and financial access. The lived experiences of Kyle Beach are fresh in our minds, and not even 3 months ago, Jalen Smerik was the target of an on-ice racial taunting in the Ukrainian Hockey League. Some responses from NHL players about these events have been okay, while others have been flat out unacceptable. And I believe that it's neither unrealistic or unreasonable to expect more out of those who represent our game at the highest level. The purpose of this program is to actually raise those expectations and teach these players how to actually navigate these types of situations and work towards building a more inclusive space in the game of hockey. Throughout the talk, I'll argue that while a lot of projects and progress is being made on the business side of things and hiring, this player development level focus is really the big next step that has to happen. By educating players on social justice and these practices of inclusion, we can foster higher on-ice performance and create informed role models within our community and ultimately grow the game. The program that I have founded is founded on two specific theories about how we learn values and beliefs, and then how we practice these values and beliefs in our everyday lives. A lot of these practices, values, beliefs make up our identities, which is especially apparent in the world of sport. Whether you identify yourself as an athlete or a fan of a specific team, sport in general is a deeply rooted aspect of a number of cultures. As we know, in Canada, the love of hockey is synonymous with what it means to be Canadian, and trying to change certain parts of hockey culture is thus no small task, as that includes the changing of Canadian culture itself. These two theories that you're looking up on the screen are called social learning theory and institutional learning theory, as you can read, and they're not mutually exclusive from each other. They actually help and work together in the shaping of our ideals. Social learning theory can be understood as the learning of core attitudes through observing, modeling, imitating, identifying with, and internalizing the behavior of those who immediately surround us. This includes our family, friends, coaches, teammates, and coworkers, pretty much just the social circles that we live in. It's accepted throughout existing research that someone's family is one of the most influential players in the development of a child's attitude. And this makes a lot of sense. However, we don't stop learning after we are children. And there are things that we learn from people who aren't necessarily in our social circle. Within the context of institutional learning theory, the learning of ideology is indirect, as people acquire their qualities from the rhetoric and practices promoted by governing bodies. What this means in hockey is that as fans and members of the hockey community, we see what happens across the NHL or Hockey Canada, USA Hockey, or the IIHF, and we internalize what hockey looks like both on and off the ice. We then recreate it in our own relationship with the game, whether we know we're doing this or not. The cycle, which is created by social and institutional learning in hockey, allows for the best aspects of our game to grow and be maintained. However, it also allows for the harmful aspects of our culture to do the exact same things. The problems which are deeply ingrained within hockey culture aren't issues of the past, and as we see, they're continuing to happen right now. I really believe that we have to try our hardest to fix them for the love of the game. I know I've listed some of the barriers surrounding hockey, but I want to be more explicit about the harmful practices which are visible right now. We can see racism and homophobia, transphobia, misogyny, ableism, the promotion of rape culture, and instances of sexual violence within our game. These are the parts of hockey that don't need to be there. It's easy to agree and say, oh, there's no place for things like this in hockey. But the truth is that they continue to be manifested in this space. This is why we must be more than just inclusive, we must be anti-exclusive. Another thing to keep in mind is that not all practices of exclusion are explicit or easily seen. There's this really cool term coined by Jamie Ryan, a PhD candidate at Queen's University, which explains the underlying acceptance of certain exclusive practices. It is called hockey normativity, as you can see on the screen. This term can be understood as the aspect of our game which puts forward the notion that white heterosexual male players are the ideal models of Canadian society. Not only is this unrepresentative of the increasingly diverse Canadian population, it also creates this notion that those who don't belong to this group aren't ideal Canadians. Although this is not explicitly or might not be explicitly stated by those in positions of hockey power, those who are challenging this notion are struggling to make their way up the ranks of the hockey world. A good anecdotal piece that has to do with this is I was recently talking to somebody who is a Black man who played for the St. Mike's Majors in the 80s. And he said that he once walked into a bar with some friends, and when they found out that he was playing for St. Mike's, they became all buddy-buddy. But before that, he was actually racially excluded and made fun of for the color of his skin. It was that being a hockey player for a known organization that really changed his lived experience. And that's absolutely ridiculous. While the projects that I have mentioned, like the Blackville Hockey Club and the EDI campaigns across the NHL, push the envelope in the youth access and business structure contexts, we really have to focus at the player development level. Hence this presentation for education program for players. In my experience with this program, I've been asked, why even do this for the players? And the three answers that I respond to justify this type of work are, well, first, to explore another contributing factor to on-ice performance. The second is to create informed athletes, because whether they like it or not, they do hold a platform as role models for everybody who's watching. And third is to set the precedence for what excellence in hockey looks like. If the world's best organizations provide social growth and community impact education to their players, why shouldn't your team? I know I've spent a lot of time justifying the need for a project like this, but I've experienced a lot of resistance from clubs when I talk to them about implementing it. So now I'd really like to show you how the program actually functions. As you can see here, this program really boils down to 4 steps. Steps 1 and 2 are consumable content to be distributed among players. Step 3 consists of having someone physically present for the players to rely on. And step 4 ensures the ability to adjust the learning plan on the fly. So let's get into it. Step 1, providing learning guides. These learning guides are like 2-pager documents with quick info on select topics. They are broken down into 4 sections. How did we get here? The topics such as racialized peoples in hockey right now, what can we do right now, and then a list of groundbreakers in hockey. This allows us to cover a variety of topics, explore a brief history of each one, why they're currently important in hockey, and recommend resources for further learning and advocacy. We also provide the names of important people who have made meaningful contributions in the hockey world, like Willie O'Ree or Rene Hess. The 7 topics that you're looking at right now are just the introductory ones, and the current plan is that they are introduced throughout the course of 1 full season. The next step of my program is a de facto social media syllabus for the players to check out and continue learning on their own time. Even a 2-page information sheet can seem daunting or honestly boring. And ensuring players that remain engaged with what they're learning is absolutely essential to the success of a program like this. This is why step 2, as you're looking at, is so important. Through research and careful curation, players are given a list of cool and informative accounts across Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, as well as blogs, podcasts, articles, stuff like that. And these accounts are to be followed with the intention of players being exposed to content as they use their social media or internet as they're scrolling, in their personal time. It also allows them to find information that they can share themselves, either on their public platform or in the immediate social circle that they're in. Some examples of these online resources include like the Color of Hockey blog, the Conscious Kid Instagram account, or the Twitter account of Rico Phillips of the OHL League office. The third step of my program is the position of an SGCI, Social Growth Community Impact, skills coach. This coach's responsibilities include the distribution of the learning guides and reading lists to the players, as well as being able to hold availability for appointments over the phone, video, text, or in person. Think of this coach as someone akin to Barbender Hill, but instead of helping players hone their skating skills, this coach allows players to help develop their social awareness skills. Most importantly are the appointment availabilities for, and for this coach to be approachable. A lot of the content that's discussed across steps 1 and 2 can either be emotionally heavy or even new for players to, take in. Having an individual who can field questions and comments and concerns in a way that makes players feel comfortable and respected is absolutely necessary. The mantra for this step of the project is that it's okay for players to not know about various social issues, but it's not okay for us and for the players to remain ignorant about exclusion in hockey. The final ongoing step of this program is the continuous collection of data. Much like the tracking of on-ice performance throughout a season, the success of this program relies on the changing of the program, given the data that is collected regarding its performance. The first key performance indicator to be measured is player participation rate. Knowing the percentage of players who actively read the learning guides, as well as engage with the online reading lists or, actually have meetings with the SGCI coach is a really good indicator of if the education plan is working. Player participation, if it's super low, then there's going to be changes that have to be made to, further engage them. Another KPI that is going to be measured or is measured is player satisfaction. Quarterly surveys are, completed amongst the players to find out A, if they like what they're learning to this point, B, if they even care about building an inclusive space on or off the ice, and C, to find out what they actually want to learn about most. Measuring player satisfaction allows us to change the education delivery plan based on feedback and try as hard as possible to maintain this engagement within the dressing room. By collecting player participation rates and satisfaction, a database is born. This database will allow us to uncover the trends of a dressing room's response to SGCI training, and from what's working to what isn't working. The analysis of this database allows other organizations to learn from each iteration of the program's implementation, allowing for increasingly effective, education in the hockey context. Now that I've shown you how it, kind of is unfolded, I want to get back to the 3 benefits of the program, which I briefly mentioned at the beginning. And these benefits are the strengthening of on-ice performance, the fostering of informed players, and supporting the growth of the game. So there exists a gap in research about SGCI or EDI, whatever you want to call it, education within hockey specifically. But there's a lot of literature and research which explores the relationship between teaching about and practicing inclusion and work performance. The graph that you're looking at here, I found from a study done by the World Economics Forum, and they had 2 workplaces. One had a more racially and gender-based diverse team, and they were provided with inclusion training. The other is a more homogenous team who wasn't provided the same type of training. As you can see in the graph, the productivity of the diverse and inclusive team it's gone up over time, and it is higher compared to the workplace that did not take the same steps and is less diverse. The hockey dressing room is not too far removed from a workplace, albeit it usually has a higher variance in smell. It may seem hard to quantify, but if your players don't gel in the room, the chances for on-ice chemistry are argued to decrease. And furthermore, if a player enters the room and is a member of a community which is historically excluded from belonging in hockey, more time is spent by that player either in fear of not fitting in or trying to pass as a member that does belong. And therefore, less time is spent on focusing on their on-ice craft. If the fear of being excluded for who you are is removed from the room, the opportunity to focus solely on ice performance increases. This is why we must know the effect of SGCI training at the player development level. Right now, all the existing research that exists, all the research exists, doesn't matter. All the research that has been done to this point points in the direction of this type of training having a long-term positive effect on work performance and, to me, therefore, on ice performance. This program actually allows us to test the limits of an inclusion performance hypothesis, and it's got to be done. Another benefit of this program is developing informed players. This may not seem as important as on-ice performance, but as you can see on the screen, the power of appearing uninformed or underprepared when talking about serious topics can be very damaging to both your reputation as an athlete as well as the reputation of the team you play for. Whether you are a verified Twitter user or just somebody who's tweeting, as a normal person like the majority of Twitter users, if you are uninformed, people start to notice. Since initially commenting on the Kyle Beach case, Jonathan Toews has had to readjust his public stance, most likely at the advice of his or Chicago's PR team. However, if Mr. Toews was better informed on how to navigate complex situations regarding justice, maybe he doesn't stay silent for 10 years. Maybe his public response that comes out first is, full of empathy. But instead, he, doesn't really know how to navigate this, puts out a message which is reached by thousands of people, and it could remind potential survivors of abuse that, hockey normativity is strong and that, maybe Captain Serious might want to uphold the exclusivity of hockey, but we can't know and we don't know. But if he had better training, there would actually be no question or no confusion on what he's actually trying to say. With the right information and the right education, Mr. Toews would have been better prepared to navigate this situation and better represent Chicago as, a player and a person. The final benefit that I want to talk about is the growth of the game. I've talked about it a lot today. I've said it. It's a pretty catchy, buzz phrase. And I really want to know or explain what that actually means. I love hockey, as do most of us who watch, play, and work in it at any level. And growing the game means that we actually, have more people playing it and more people loving it the same way that we do. It should be available to everybody who wants to play it, and it shouldn't, exclude anyone based on race, gender, sexuality, financial access. And I think we can all agree that this is a good sentiment, but this type of program at the player level really helps push this ideal forward and make it realized. If the governing bodies of hockey actively seek to change the landscape of the culture for the better, we will see a ripple effect down the ladder of hockey organizations. By setting an example at the top level, the rest of the hockey world will follow as per institutional learning theory. We want more kids growing up loving hockey because it's the community which keeps our sport alive. I'm going to end my talk today with some of the same content that I provide in each of the learning guides. What can we do right now? As you can see above, the steps are pretty simple. We can learn, we can amplify, volunteer, donate, advocate, or even all of the above. For those of you watching who want to learn more, here are some resources to get your feet wet. Black Girl Hockey Club on Twitter is a great follow, as are the Conscious Kid and Curtis Gabriel Instagram accounts. The Conscious Kid is more of a resource for all generic social awareness stuff, not hockey specific, whereas Curtis Gabriel is a current Toronto Marley who is an excellent advocate for inclusion in hockey. I'd also recommend checking out the Color of Hockey blog, which I mentioned earlier, which celebrates the success of people of color in hockey, and it also details stories of either exclusion that they've had to overcome and solidarity as well. Another thing you could do is amplify. It's a pretty simple concept when you think about it, and you can do it on your own social media accounts or in your social groups and around your dinner table. When you're talking hockey with your uncle who thinks that William Nylander is soft, tell him, hey, well, that he's wrong, but also start talking to him about the change that's happening in the culture of hockey and the cool aspects of growing the game to new people who could actually go on to become his favorite player down the road. A great place to start for volunteering, if you are not somebody who volunteers too often and you don't really know how to get into that kind of space, I would recommend checking out Showing Up for Racial Justice. If you're based in North America, there's plenty of active chapters across a ton of cities who all have calendars that tell you how you can help, when you can help, and where people are needed. I'm currently based in Toronto, and I am an active participant in a lot of Surge Toronto events. And they have a few ones coming up in December that I would definitely recommend checking out if you have the time. If you have the financial ability to donate some of your money, it can seem also challenging picking where to donate to and how to get started. The two of the recommendations that I've provided here, well, first are the You Can Play project, which was founded by Patrick and Brian Burke. This project works on eliminating homophobia in hockey, and they continue to do a ton of wonderful things and could probably use some money. If you can and want to donate to something Toronto local and are local there like I am, I'd recommend checking out the Next Gen Canada project run by Daryl Devenish. This is a community not-for-profit that looks to help out talented minor hockey players whose families cannot afford to keep them in the game. Retention and development programs like the Next Gen one are incredibly relevant, and some of Daryl's players were recently supported by a donation made by Darnell Nurse. Lastly, I would recommend advocating for the change that you want to see in hockey. Get involved in your community. Keep pushing for the growth of the game. Whether you're playing in beer league or house league, major junior or NHL, the love of the game is really what unites us all. So let's continue to try to break down barriers which exclude more people from loving the game as much as we do. For anyone that stayed this long, thank you so much for listening. I'd also like to give a big thank you to Jack Han for the opportunity to submit this presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me by email or even on Twitter. My tweets aren't that great, but such is life. Again, my name is Logan Churchill, and thank you so much for your time. If you want to check out my references, there they are. Awesome. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.